Welcome everyone and happy Friday. Welcome to MDF's Meet the Drug Developer series. Today is August 6, 2021, and we will be meeting with Avidity Biosciences. As a reminder, the MDF mission, Care and a Cure, is to enhance the quality of life of people living with myotonic dystrophy and accelerate research focused on finding treatments and a cure. Our work focuses on support and education, research, and advocacy. Please check out our website, myotonic.org, for support resources and opportunities. So we have toolkits and publications, including clinical care guidelines and recommendations. Our support groups and Facebook chat information is available, as well as our calendar of events. On our website, you'll also find our digital academy, which includes presentations and videos from past events and will include today's presentation as well. Okay, coming up will be our final Ask the Expert session. It is the third Friday of every month since February at 12 o'clock Pacific. We have one left that will be on August 20th. It will be DM and anxiety. So please, if you haven't registered yet, you can register and submit your questions, myotonic.org/ask-expert-series. And if you have not yet registered for our annual conference, that is coming up quickly. We are close to only a month away. You can register for the conference at myotonic.org/2021-virtual-annual-conference. And as many of you are aware, September 15th has been designated International Myotonic Dystrophy Awareness Day. And Senators Kane and Klobuchar have sponsored legislation to indicate the actual day, September 15th, will be designated. There is a Senate resolution to suggest to everyone we should be celebrating, we should be sharing, and we should be doing everything we can to raise awareness about myotonic dystrophy. You can learn more about International DM Awareness Day at myotonic.org/international-DM-day. Today's session will be recorded and added to the Digital Academy at myotonic.org/digital-academy. If you have questions about today's presentation, please don't hesitate to give us a call at 415-800-7777, or you can email us at info@myotonic.org. Okay, who you are here to see today. Dr. Jae Kim joined Avidity in July 2020 and serves as Chief Medical Officer. Prior to joining Avidity, he served as Clinical Research Head, Chair of the Clinical Trial Review Board, and Vice President of Clinical Development at Alnylam Pharmaceuticals. Prior to that, he had global development roles at MyoKardia and Amgen. Dr. Kim received his Bachelor of Arts in Neurobiology Magna Cum Laude from Cornell University and his medical degree from Cornell University Medical College. He completed his post-doctoral fellowship in genetics at Harvard Medical School and his clinical training in cardiovascular disease at the Brigham and Women's Hospital and Massachusetts General Hospital. Dr. Kim is a board-certified cardiologist, was an NIH-funded Principal Investigator, and served on the Faculty of Medicine at Harvard Medical School and Brigham and Women's. Also joining us today is the fantastic Dr. Elizabeth, or Lisa as we know her, Ackerman. Dr. Ackerman joined Avidity in January of 2020, and serves as the Neuromuscular Therapeutic Area Head and Vice President of Clinical Development. Lisa brings extensive experience in both the research and development of RNA-targeted therapeutics and their application to rare diseases. She has held leadership positions in industry and patient advocacy groups, including Ionis Pharmaceuticals, Autonomy, the Myotonic Dystrophy Foundation, and Torrey Pines Therapeutics. Over her 8-year tenure at Ionis, she led the development of Tegsedi and several other rare disease programs. Lisa holds a PhD in biochemistry from UC San Diego and completed an NIH postdoc fellowship in pharmacology at UC San Diego. Joining them today is Ms. Alyssa Peters. Alyssa joined Avidity in June 2020 and serves as the Director of Patient Advocacy and Corporate Affairs. Alyssa has focused her career on supporting the development and commercialization of RNA-targeted therapeutics for rare diseases with high unmet needs. Prior to joining Avidity, Alyssa served as Associate Director of Global Marketing, helping bring Tegsedi to patients living with TTR amyloidosis with polyneuropathy, a rare neuromuscular disease which ignited her passion to focus in this therapeutic area. At Avidity, Alyssa actively partners with patient and advocacy communities to ensure their perspectives are central across all initiatives at the organization. Alyssa is passionate about seeing people's lives changed through the delivery of new therapeutics. We are very fortunate to have the three of them here with us today. And thank you all who are listening and who submitted questions in advance. They will do their best to answer the questions that you have submitted in advance. Some questions that were submitted, they are not able to answer for legal reasons or because they are not at all associated with the work that Avidity is doing. However, everything that's relevant, they'll do their best to answer. If you have questions during the presentation, please use the chat box. Use the drop-down function of the chat box to select Send Question to Staff. If you select Send Question to Staff, they will actually receive that. You don't want to actually use the chat option, but you do use the chat box and select the drop-down menu option, Send Question to Staff. Okay, thank you all for joining us. Welcome, Avidity Biosciences.
Hello, and thank you for the kind introduction, Dr. Stevenson, and thank you for having us here today. We are thrilled for this opportunity to share with you a little bit about us, Avidity Biosciences, our work, and our collaboration with the myotonic dystrophy community. Next slide, please. We will be making forward-looking statements during today's presentation. So who are we? Next slide. Avidity is a biotechnology company based in sunny La Jolla, California. We are committed to improving the lives of patients and families afflicted with rare diseases that have limited therapeutic options, like myotonic dystrophy, through the development of innovative drugs. Our team has extensive knowledge in RNA drug development, and that is combined with our commitment to involve patients and their families at every step in our drug development process. It is not just because it's the right thing to do, but it also helps us generate the best evidence around our therapeutics to meaningfully improve people's lives. And how do we do this? Next slide, please. Our innovative platform unlocks a new way to deliver drugs directly to cells that have heretofore been difficult to reach with current technologies. For example, in muscle and heart cells. We are applying our technology to develop a new drug towards myotonic dystrophy type 1. In this journey, we look forward to continuing our partnership with the DM1 community to incorporate the patient voice at every step. We are excited with the recent announcement of our clearance by the FDA to proceed with our first human trial, a phase 1/2 clinical trial for AOC 1001. Our investigational drug for the treatment of DM1. We plan to initiate the trial this year, and Lisa Ackerman will be sharing details about this trial in just a bit. Next slide, please. Here we'll take some time to answer some questions that were submitted by you. One question was, what are you working on for myotonic dystrophy right now? Well, we're glad that you asked. We are developing a drug called AOC1001 for the treatment of patients with myotonic dystrophy type 1. And what is AOC1001? Next slide, please. So AOC1001 is an antibody oligonucleotide conjugate, or AOC for short. This therapeutic is designed to treat the underlying root cause of DM1 by reducing toxic DMPK RNA in the very tissues and cells that are afflicted with the disease manifestations and have been relatively inaccessible with prior technologies. And what are AOCs? Next slide, please. So AOCs are an innovative discovery by Avidity Biosciences that delivers drugs directly to affected cells, like muscle and heart cells. The AOC platform uses proven technologies of well-known drug types, and when combined together or conjugated, overcomes their specific limitations. So let's start with antibodies. So antibodies are naturally occurring proteins made by your body and generally used to fight infections. They are used for drugs because they can target almost any protein that are outside of cells or on cells. But they're also too big to target molecules inside cells, such as RNA. Antibodies are a well-characterized drug class for safety and is the modality for over 100 approved drugs, many of which are for chronic conditions. At Avidity, we're using the antibody as a vehicle to deliver our drugs to muscle and heart cells. Now let's talk about oligonucleotides, or oligos for short. An oligo is a short strand of DNA or RNA. Oligos can be powerful drugs because they can change disease-causing gene expression. These are a growing class of drugs, many of which are disease-modifying treatments. But it is really hard to get oligos into certain cell types, and that's what the AOC technology overcomes. Next slide, please. So what kind of oligo does AOC1001 use? So AOC1001 is an RNA interference therapeutic, or RNAi. RNAi is mediated by short interfering RNAs called siRNAs. So RNAi is a natural biological process that regulates gene expression by interfering with disease RNA. For example, this mechanism helps your body fight off things like RNA-containing viruses. So RNAi therapeutics use this process to target disease-causing RNA. So how does it all come together? And how does AOC1001 work? Next slide, please. AOC1001 contains an antibody that targets muscle cells, combined with or conjugated with an siRNA that chews up mutant DMPK mRNA, the root cause of DM1. The antibody has a unique ability to recognize and dock with a specific protein on muscle and heart cells, delivering oligos that change gene expression, improving the power of the siRNA. You can think of the antibody on our AOC as a bus that's taking its passengers, or oligos, to a very specific bus stop and then letting them off. And in our case, that bus stop is a muscle or heart cell. And the passenger here is an siRNA therapeutic. Next slide, please. Another question that was submitted was how does AOC1001 work? AOC1001 is designed to modify the underlying cause of DM1, and we're happy to explain how. Next slide, please. So DM1 is caused by a change in your DNA called a mutation in a gene called DMPK. The change or mutation in DNA causes hundreds or thousands of nucleotide repeats at the end of the DMPK gene. When the DMPK gene is transcribed into RNA, the RNA also carries these expansion repeats, which fold over onto themselves, resulting in a very sticky aggregation that makes these mutant DMPK RNAs toxic to the cell. So how are they toxic? Well, these sticky mutant RNAs bind up many important proteins required for normal cellular functions, thereby causing disease. Next slide, please. AOC 1001 is designed to treat the root cause of DM1 by reducing this toxic DMPK RNA. The antibody component of AOC 1001 delivers the siRNA oligo directly to muscle and heart cells. Inside the cells, the oligo chews up this toxic DMPK mRNA. Here you see this graphic where the siRNA is loaded up into a Pac-Man, which kind of Pac-Man represents a complex that results in an enzymatic activity, chewing up mutant DMPK RNA, allowing the muscle cell to function more normally. Next slide, please. Here's another question. When will your new drug get into clinical trials? We're happy to share with you the status of AOC 1001 as well as the rest of our near-term pipeline. Next slide, please. AOC 1001 is the lead or first program in our pipeline to advance into the clinic. And as I just mentioned, we plan to start our first clinical trial with AOC 1001 this year. And this study will be a phase 1/2 trial in adults with myotonic dystrophy type 1. And Lisa will be telling you more about this trial shortly. In addition to AOC 1001, we are advancing a R&D or research and development pipeline of potential treatments designed to treat a number of diseases such as rare muscle diseases such as FSHD, BMD, muscle atrophy, and Pompe disease. Next slide, please. Another question from you is, how are you addressing DM2? Well, that's a really hard question. We recognize that there's a huge unmet need for treatment options for DM2 patients. Today, we don't have a specific program in our pipeline for DM2, but scientific advancement for one disease can lead to a better understanding of another, especially with related conditions such as DM1 and DM2. We believe we have the potential to use learnings from our research and development of AOC 1001 to potentially address DM2 in the future. Next slide, please. Now, I'm very pleased to pass the presentation over to Alyssa Peters, our head of patient advocacy, to share with you more about how we are partnering with the DM1 community.
Thank you so much, Jay. I'm really thrilled to be here today. I've had the pleasure of speaking and meeting many of you, and I'm going to talk about how we are currently partnering with the myotonic dystrophy community. I'll start my talk by answering an important question we received, which is, what is the most significant obstacle to produce a treatment for DM1? First and foremost, we understand that DM1 is a very complex condition with symptoms that affect everyone differently, even amongst the same family members. We also understand how important the element of time is for people living with DM1 as a progressive disease. And so a very significant obstacle is being able to deliver a meaningful treatment that will help benefit as many people as possible, as quickly as possible. And so in order to try to achieve this, we're continually partnering with the DM1 community as well as advocacy leaders like the MDF to be able to deliver a meaningful treatment in the most rigorous and efficient way possible. One of the important initiatives that we are supporting is a large natural history study called the NDM1 study. NDM1 is a non-interventional natural history study, meaning that it's not evaluating an investigational medicine in development, but rather helping advance the understanding of progression of myotonic dystrophy. NDM1 is designed and run by the Myotonic Dystrophy Clinical Research Network, or the DMCRN, with support from sponsors including Avidity and the Myotonic Dystrophy Foundation. NDM1 will enroll 700 people with DM1 across 17 different sites in the US and Europe. I know that several of you listening today are actively participating in the NDM1 study, and so we want to say thank you because your participation is helping inform and advance AOC 1001 for the DM1 community. At Avidity, we are also investing in gaining a deeper understanding of what it's like to live with or care for someone with myotonic dystrophy. Through our conversations, we've gained really valuable insights into the challenges and opportunities of a current journey to a diagnosis, what it's like to establish our care team and management plan for myotonic dystrophy. We also understand that everyone's disease journey is unique, and so we are committed to continuing to listen, learn, and partner with you to better understand your needs so that we can bring forth support resources that will better help address those. As Jay shared, we're constantly seeking input throughout each stage of the drug development process to best meet your needs, partnering early and collaborating often with the community and advocacy leaders like MDF will always be a part of our drug development process. Patient and caregiver perspectives inform our approach to drug research and development and inspire us to stay committed to our mission to improve the lives of people impacted by diseases, including DM1. Our clinical trial programs are designed in partnership with patients and their families, so we can ensure we're meeting your needs and expectations and addressing what matters to you most. Importantly, we want you to feel heard and supported by our team. Please know that you always have an open line of communication with us. I look forward to meeting many of you that are joining us today on the call. On this slide, I want to take a minute to share how some of your feedback and input have already directly impacted our development program for AOC 1001. Recently, we convened a group of individuals from the DM1 community in a panel discussion to really understand the perceptions and expectations for participating in clinical trials. Through that discussion, we gained very valuable feedback that will enhance the experience for clinical trial participants as well as minimize any barriers to enrolling. In fact, Lisa will share with you some of the specific services and programs we're putting in place for the MARINA trial shortly. We're also collaborating with many of you on the development of a new and important tool called the Patient-Reported Outcome Assessment. A PRO assessment is a disease-specific tool that is a direct reflection of your shared experiences living with DM1 and the impact of the disease that will be used to help measure how meaningful a treatment is in clinical trials. All of the initiatives that I just shared are very important to helping advance AOC 1001. So we're so grateful for your continued partnership and collaboration with us. We truly couldn't do our jobs without your input. And with that, I'd like to bring up Lisa Ackerman, our VP of Clinical Development, to talk with you more about how AOC 1001 works and the MARINA trial. Over to you, Lisa.
Great, thank you, Alyssa. Well, I'm going to start with one of the questions that we received from you, which is AOC 1001 designed to affect all symptoms or just one or two? Next slide, please. Now, this is kind of a bit of a tricky question to answer because of the complexity of DM1. So as you know, DM1 can affect a large number of organs, tissues, and systems throughout the body, and that's what we tried to show here on this slide. There's also a wide variability between DM1 patients with respect to what symptoms they have. In addition, the body's different organs and tissues actually talk with each other, so you might imagine that there could be direct and indirect effects of any type of therapy that is targeting the underlying cause of DM1. But if I can go to the next slide, please. But as Jay said earlier, AOC 1001 was specifically designed to target heart and muscle cells. So our hypothesis is that it will affect symptoms that are related to the respiratory function, muscle strength, muscle function, heart function, and GI function. So these are the symptoms that we are going to be primarily focused on studying in our clinical trials. And we'll be using a lot of different tests to measure them, such as grip strength tests, walking tests, breathing tests, and tests that measure your heart function. So can I have the next slide, please? So here are a couple more questions that we received. What data do you have with AOC 1001? And how long will the effect of the treatment last? Will we need multiple treatments, say over a day, a month, or a year? So I'll try to answer that question in the next few slides. So if you could go to the next one, please. Okay, right now, all the data that we have are from experiments that were done in the lab on cells or animal models. So this slide shows an experiment that was done in monkeys. The monkeys were given a single IV infusion of AOC 1001, and we looked at what happened to the DMPK mRNA in the thigh muscle and the calf muscle over time. So each time point that we looked at is shown on the bottom of the graph. So time 0, 4 weeks, 8 weeks, and 12 weeks. And time 0 is actually before we gave the monkeys the AOC 1001. You can see from this graph that by 4 weeks after this single IV infusion of AOC 1001, that the amount of DMPK RNA measured had decreased by about 75%. And it stayed down out to that 12-week time point. So based on this animal model, we are encouraged that the effect of AOC 1001 may last at least 3 months. And what this means in the clinic is that it will be given at approximately 3-month intervals. So I can go to the next slide, please. So this is another experiment that was done in monkeys. This time they were treated for a 3-month period. And we also looked at a lot of different muscles in this experiment. We looked at skeletal muscle, the diaphragm, and the heart muscle. And in each one of these different types of muscles, you can see we saw a reduction in the DMPK RNA between 75 and 80%. And it's also important to note that we did not see any adverse effects in these studies. So taken together, the experiments that we've done to date have shown that AOC 1001 is doing what we intended it to do. And these data have allowed us now to progress this compound into clinical trials. So I'll go to the next slide. So we received a lot of questions from you about the clinical trials, and so I'm going to start with this one. What will your first clinical trial look like? Well, if you go to the next slide, I'm very excited to be able to share with you today the information about our upcoming trial. We've named the trial MARINA, and it's a phase 1-2 trial that will enroll adults with DM1. And as Jay said, we'll be starting it later this year. So go to the next slide, please. This slide shows a little bit more about the study design of the MARINA trial. And we have 3 main goals. And the first one is to evaluate the safety and tolerability of AOC 1001. The second is to understand the pharmacokinetics. And what that means is just how your body is processing and breaking down the drug. And the third main goal is to evaluate the ability of AOC 1001 to decrease DMPK RNA in muscle biopsies. So this is going to be a placebo-controlled trial, which means that some participants will have active drug and others will receive placebo. Both the active drug and the placebo are going to be given by an IV infusion. Now, the participants, the doctors, and the study staff will not know who is receiving the active drug and who is receiving placebo. And we're using a randomization of 3-to-1, which basically means that for every 3 people who get active drug, 1 person will receive placebo. Now, there are 2 parts to the study, Part A and Part B. Part A, participants will have a single dose of AOC 1001 or placebo, and then will be followed for 6 months. After the 6-month period, if they decide, they will be able to enter an extension trial where everybody receives active drug. In Part B, we have 3 different dose levels, and participants will receive 3 doses of either AOC 1001 or placebo in a 3-month period. They will then be followed for another 3-month period. And like participants in Part A, if they complete the full 6-month of the trial, then they too can enter the extension trial if they wish. Next slide, please. So some of the other questions that we received about the trial are who will be eligible for the trial? Will we need to be officially diagnosed with a genetic test to participate in the trial? And where will the trial centers be located? So I'm going to walk you through some of the answers that we are able to share with you today for this. So that's shown on the next slide. So with respect to the eligibility for the trial, We will be enrolling both males and females between the ages of 18 and 65 at the time of screening. Now, participants must have a genetic diagnosis of DM1, but if you don't have a genetic test yet, it's going to be offered as part of the screening process. The study is going to be run at multiple sites across the United States, and they are being selected based on their experience with caring and managing DM1 people. We are currently in the site selection and startup mode, but as soon as we are able, we will share more information with you and with MDF, and we'll also be posting it on clinicaltrials.gov. Next slide. So MARINA has been designed, as Alyssa said, with the input from patients and their families, with the goal to minimize the barriers to participation and enhancing the overall clinical trial experience. So as part of the direct input that we received from many of you in the community, we have incorporated a number of elements into our trial that we hope will lessen the burden and help promote a better trial experience. And those include home health care and telemedicine. And basically what this means is that there'll be some visits that you can either go to the site for the visit, or you can have a qualified nurse come to your home and complete the study requirements at your house. We'll also have some telemedicine visits, and this is participants will be given a smartphone in which they can connect with the study doctor and the staff to complete those visits. We will also be providing a travel concierge service, and this service will arrange and prepay for the airfare, lodging, and transportation for the study participants and for one caregiver. And you also have the opportunity to be reimbursed for reasonable trial-related expenses such as meals, parking, etc. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Jay, who will close us out, and then I think we'll have some more questions from you.
Thank you, Lisa. Next slide, please. So in summary, we are excited about the potential of Avidity's AOC technology, which unlocks a new way to deliver drugs directly to affected cells, like muscle and heart cells, and is well suited for a investigational therapeutic treating the underlying cause of DM1. We are planning to initiate our first human clinical trial, MARINA, about which we're really excited, with AOC 1001 for the treatment of adults with DM1 this year. At Avidity, we are committed to listening, learning, and partnering with the DM1 community, including the Myotonic Dystrophy Foundation, to better understand the needs of patients and families so we can better serve this community and bring forth meaningful treatments. We are partnering with the Myotonic Dystrophy Foundation, to whom we are extremely grateful, to provide you with more information and resources as soon as they become available. Next slide, please. So this is a picture, and these are some of the Avidity team members who are the faces of the community, faces of the company, and are working hard every day to address the unmet needs of patients and the community. We are passionate, and it's our privilege to serve this patient, caregiver, and advocate community. I am frequently overshadowed and outshined by the passion of my amazing colleagues, as Alyssa and Lisa here have just shown, and I'm honestly really proud about that. So we are always here to answer your questions. You can connect with us at patients@aviditybio.com, as shown in the bottom of this slide. Thank you so much for your time and attention. I will turn this presentation over to Alyssa now to lead the question and answers portion of the day.
Great. Thank you so much, Jay. We're so grateful for all the important questions we received from you. We hope we've been able to answer several of them, and we have some time to answer some more. So we've actually received a number of questions about the impact of COVID-19. So we'll start with our first question of how has COVID-19 impacted the planning for the MARINA trial? And as a follow-up to that, if a participant has received COVID-19 vaccines, will that disqualify them from participating in the trial? And I will ask Lisa to answer that question.
Okay, great. Thanks, Alyssa. Yeah, that's a really good question, and I think really timely, even as, things keep changing and looking better, and now we have the variant. So it's definitely something that is a shifting situation, and we're keeping our eye on. What I can say is so far, COVID-19 has not affected our timelines, and that we remain on schedule and moving forward as we had planned. But as you said, it's a shifting situation, and so we will keeping our eye on it. The protocol actually has been designed with COVID-19 in mind, and we have incorporated as much flexibility as we can into the clinical trial so that we will be ready to manage any unforeseen changes that might happen. And I think there was another question about vaccine. So if you've had the COVID-19 vaccine, it will not exclude you from participating in the MARINA trial.
Great, thank you, Lisa. We've received a few more questions about AOC 1001. And so, Jay, I'd like to toss this question to you. Is AOC 1001 safe?
That's a great question. And to be clear, the primary objective of the first in human study is to evaluate just that. In the MARINA trial, the primary objective is to evaluate the safety and tolerability of AOC 1001. With that being said, AOCs were purposefully designed using component technologies with prior acceptable safety profiles. That is to say, monoclonal antibodies and siRNA therapeutics. These parts of the AOC have been shown to have acceptable safety profiles as human therapeutics. We're also encouraged that there were no significant toxicity findings in routine animal studies evaluating AOC 1001. These studies are usually done in advance of entering a drug into the clinic. The safety of AOC 1001 will be assessed in patients in the upcoming MARINA trial.
Great, thank you, Jay. Another question we received about AOC 1001 is it designed to slow, stop, or reverse the signs and symptoms related to myotonic dystrophy? Lisa, could you answer that question for us?
Sure. That is always an important question, and I know that's always on the mind of patients who are going to participate in clinical trials. But it's also a really hard question to answer and to predict what's going to happen when we get into the clinic. I think it's important to remember that AOC 1001 was designed to target the underlying cause of the disease. So we hope with this type of mechanism that we're going to make the muscle cells and the heart cells healthier. Even though MARINA was designed mostly to look at safety and tolerability, we are going to be looking at exploratory endpoints about how the disease is progressing. So as we move along further in our program, we'll have a better idea about that question.
Great, thank you, Lisa. A number of questions we received are, how can someone sign up to participate in the trial? Where can I look for information about the trial? Lisa, can you answer this one for us, please?
Yeah, so we will partner very closely, as we have been all along with MDF, to get information to you about the trial as soon as we are able to do that. And of course, we'll be posting it on clinicaltrials.gov as soon as we're able, and it will have more information for you. And then, once you have this information, it's good to talk to your doctor, talk to the sites, and see if maybe this trial might be a good fit for you.
Great, thank you, Lisa. A couple more questions that we received are, will AOC 1001 affect CNS symptoms? So Lisa, could you also answer that one for us?
Yeah, that's a good question. And AOC 1001 does not get into the brain. So we are not anticipating it to directly affect any of the symptoms that are being generated by the disease in the brain.
Great. And remember, you can type in a question in the chat box to send to us as well. A couple more questions we received are, can people who are not in the trial be able to take this drug during an extension? I'm happy to answer that. So right now we're really focused on establishing the efficacy and benefit of AOC 1001 through a number of clinical trials. And it's important to note that we are establishing a medical affairs team who will be focused on strategy for determining access going forward. So at this time, receiving drug will only be through the first clinical trial, which is the MARINA study. Lisa, can you expand on the placebo control? Does this mean that not every patient will receive active drug in the trial?
That's right. Yeah, you know, it's one of the things for running a clinical trial so that we can have the best controls that we can. So at the end of the day, we can be assured to the answer that we are getting. And so unfortunately, in order to do that, it's really imperative that we have placebos in the trial. So we've tried to minimize that amount. So we're doing what's called a randomization of 3 to 1. So for the chances of being placebo, you have 3 chances to get treated drug and 1 chance to have a placebo. So that's one thing that we try to incorporate into the design of the trial. And also, we do have that extension study so that if you do participate in CS1 and you did have placebo, you will be guaranteed to have an active drug in the extension study. You know, also depending that extension study is approved by regulators and the IRBs and all that. But if it's approved and it's ongoing, then there will be a chance to get active drug in the extension trial.
Thank you, Lisa. We have a question about our approach with our drug technology. Jae, can you talk to us about some of the advantages of our approach in DM1 with the AOC technology?
Sure. Thank you, Alyssa. As we mentioned before in the presentation, the AOC technology overcomes a lot of limitations with current therapeutics. And the innovation is taking components that have shown, you know, efficacy and safety, you know, as therapeutic modalities, and really overcoming the intrinsic limitations of both monoclonals and oligonucleotides to have access to cell types that have not been reasonably been approachable before, especially, for example, muscle cells of the heart, skeletal, and smooth muscle in nature. So with the conjugate, or putting together the antibody and oligonucleotide together, we can gain access to muscle cells with high potency and anticipated effectiveness, and also, as Lisa had shown in her slides, incredible durability of action, which means convenience for the patient, that these drugs hopefully will not be needed to be infused at any great frequency, and we think it will likely be around 3 months between infusions.
Great, thank you, Jae. Another question for you, Jae, around our recent news. Can you explain what orphan drug designation means?
Oh, it really is. It's a designation by the FDA's, you know, the Office of Orphan Drug Product Development, that they recognize that the condition that we're treating is a rare disease of the orphan drug category, and in addition to that, that the therapeutic, you know, has potential, you know, medical value in addressing that unmet need. So I think it's a, you know, it's a wonderful mechanism by which the FDA can help to advance therapeutics in rare disease, and you know, we're you know, especially excited about the designation.
Great, thank you, Jae. Another question we received is, how are you addressing congenital myotonic dystrophy type 1? Jae, could you answer this one as well?
Right. The current clinical trial that will be initiated this year, MARINA, is focused on adults with myotonic dystrophy type 1, and and we fully recognize the high unmet need in congenital DM1, and we are really focused on eventually developing the therapeutic in that population.
Great. We've received several questions around timing in terms of the study and the overall drug development plan. Jay, can you give us from a high level an overview of drug development for rare diseases and what that timing generally look like?
What I'm hearing is, what do rare disease development timelines look like? The challenge here is that there's no one size fits all, and that is the unique aspect of rare disease drug development. Even differences in age, or minor differences in populations could mean very different impacts on drug development timelines. But what I can say is that, especially for the populations with high unmet need that we are focusing our development strategies towards, we're instilled with a huge sense of urgency in getting these therapeutics to patients as quickly as possible. And that means having a real fit for purpose point of view. What I mean by fit for purpose is that being very strategic about generating evidence of high quality, but also having that balance with speed in mind. So, I think, we at Avidity are creative thinkers. So our objective is really to act with urgency to get these therapeutics to patients as quickly as possible.
Thank you. And it looks like we have one more question, actually asked by several people, which is, when will the trial start? As we shared, as Lisa mentioned, we're working on getting the MARINA trial up and started this year. And so we'll be partnering very closely with the MDF to get you additional information as it becomes available in terms of eligibility criteria, as well as clinical trial site locations. We'll also be posting that information on clinicaltrials.gov. Please don't hesitate to reach out to connect with our team anytime at patients@aviditybio.com. We're always here and happy to answer any of your questions. And with that, I will turn it back over to Tanya to wrap us up.
Thank you so much, all of you. That was fantastic, and it is so exciting and so inspiring for our community to hear what you are engaged in. AOC 1001 and the MARINA study as a whole are very exciting. I want to thank you too, just take a second to acknowledge the care that you took to develop this presentation to make it very accessible, and how carefully you have partnered with the entire DM community to develop the study. And I hope that folks will also be ecstatic to know that you will be at our conference and you will have a booth. So if folks are interested in asking questions, please know that if you register for the conference, you will be able to meet with someone from the Avidity team during the exhibitor showcase times. So in the meantime, please don't hesitate to send emails to Avidity. Thank you all very much for joining us on this beautiful Friday afternoon, and we wish you all a fantastic weekend. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tanya.
Thank you.